Hello there, this is Lawrence Hebron with Dave Henderson, here with the American Christian Patriot Church, bringing you the latest episode of The Quest. Now, if this looks a little bit different, it's because it is. We normally do this, we tape this at our worship services on Tuesday evenings, but today we had an opportunity to have a very special guest with us. She just couldn't be here in Southern California with us, so we didn't want to pass up the opportunity to have KrisAnne Hall join us. She is a constitutional lawyer, constitutional expert. She gives classes on the Constitution. She is a former prosecutor, an Army veteran, a missionary, a Christian, a patriot. Her credentials just go on and on and on. And we're delighted to have her with us today. So, Kris, thank you for joining us. We appreciate that.
It is my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, let's jump right into this. The first issue that we want to consider today is very topical, and it's an ongoing issue. The Apple Corporation and the FBI are currently engaged in a protracted court battle, which once again pits privacy rights against public safety. Now, the government wants to force the Apple Corporation to create basically a backdoor to its iPhone so it can explore the phone that was used by the Islamic terrorist who committed the terrorist attack here in San Bernardino on December 2nd of last year. Apple is fighting back, saying that this would create a tool for the government and others around the world to pry into the private information that's found on hundreds of millions of iPhones used by users around the globe. So first of all, KrisAnne, what do you see as the main constitutional principles at issue here? And if you were the judge considering this case, how would you rule?
Well, first off, Apple's lying, the FBI is lying. Okay, this is not about cracking into an Apple phone. This is about ending encryption. The director of the Department of Homeland Security has given an interview before Congress that has said just as much. This is not even about this particular phone, the San Bernardino terrorists. As a matter of fact, this is a legal issue that has been going on between Apple and the FBI for years. This is a case that is already being heard before the courts, not for terrorists, but for drug dealers. And so Apple is using this San Bernardino incident as an excuse to inflame the emotions of the people to do something that is completely and totally unconstitutional. You see, they don't want to get into this terrorist phone. The FBI and their tech experts will tell you they could get into this phone if they wanted to. And as a matter of fact, this particular phone has this further encryption, and the encryption is only instituted once you have failed to enter the password, the proper password, 10 times. Apple told the FBI, do not use the password more than 10 times, because if you use the wrong password more than 10 times, we will not be able to get into this phone. So the FBI knew they weren't supposed to use the wrong password 10 times. So they did anyway. And their response was, well, even if we had not, we still could not get into the phone to the depth that we want to get into, because it's all about encryption. And so they purposely tripped the protective mechanisms to create a public platform, because they now have a terrorist instead of a drug dealer. And so they want everybody in America to think that Apple is interfering with the FBI's ability to catch terrorists, when in fact it's not the FBI wanting to limit this to just terrorists. They want a backdoor to everybody's phone. And what that happens is, now if Apple is forced to create this backdoor, every single iPhone now has a backdoor, which means that the FBI now has the iOS to get into every single Apple iPhone without a warrant. Now, as it stands, they have to go to Apple with a warrant and get Apple to get into the phones. But with what they're wanting Apple to do now, give them this technology, they will never have to seek another warrant to break into another Apple phone ever again. And that's the problem here, because this is a clear violation of our Fourth Amendment right to our against unreasonable searches and seizures. For me, the government always tries to say, let's strike this balance between safety and privacy. That balance was already struck when we ratified the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment reads, the right of the people, not the privilege of the government, but the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. Now, we'll pause there for a second, because the Fourth Amendment establishes that you are not free from all searches and seizures, just unreasonable ones. But we don't need the courts, as they so like to do, to define reasonableness for us, because the Fourth Amendment already does that. It says, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. And then it tells you what reasonableness is. No warrant shall issue but based upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. By Fourth Amendment, by constitutional standards, the only way the government can search and seize is if they have a proper warrant based upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, meaning you can challenge it in a court of common law, particularly describing the place to be searched, and that's a magic word there, that word "and" the persons or things to be seized. That means that word "and" in the Fourth Amendment means that all five of these principles must be present. All five must be present in order to have a reasonable search and seizure. And what the FBI wants to do is avoid the warrant and to change the standards from probable cause to the Patriot Act standards of mere relevance. They do not want to submit it to a court of our jurisdiction. They want to use the secret federal courts that they've established that develop these fake warrants. And they want to be able to search and seize without any specificity whatsoever, in just general terms based upon their whim whenever they want. And that is completely and totally unconstitutional. As a matter of fact, that is one of the largest principles, one of the largest violations of liberty that our framers separated from Great Britain over.
So basically what you're saying here is that if somebody comes to you and says, trust me, I'm from the government, you shouldn't take them at face value. Is that right?
Oh my goodness, you're not supposed to trust government. I mean, that's the whole principle of a constitutional republic. If we were going to be trusting government, we would have established a kingdom. That's all our framers and their forefathers knew for over 700 years was kingdoms. And they said, look, we know you can't trust government because in a kingdom, the king only keeps his promises as long as you hold a sword at his throat. The minute you drop the sword on the king, he goes back to being king and the people go back to being subjects. So we have to have a constitutional republic where governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. And then when any form of government operates contrary to our rights, it's the right of the people to alter or abolish them. Because we're supposed to be watching them and we're not supposed to be trusting them. The minute we trust them, we become ruled by them.
Well, it's interesting that this trust issue comes up. We considered this here just a couple of weeks ago. In fact, our Quest episode just about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, had to do with this issue between the FBI and the Apple Corporation. And one of the things that came out that very day was a newspaper article pertaining to California and school records. Now, it seems that there are a number of parents in California who feel that their special needs children are not getting the attention that they are entitled to according to law here in the state of California. In order to make their case, their attorneys have asked to subpoena the records of all the California public school students from 2008 to the present. That's about 10 million records that are being subpoenaed. Now, this is going to become available and basically going to be open to the public, and it includes all kinds of information in there, all kinds of private information. Not only just your name, but your address, your phone number, your social security number when that's provided, health records, mental health records, school records, test records, and on and on. Now, I'm sure that when the parents were giving this information, they never imagined in their wildest dream that it would become part of a public record in a court. Same thing here. The federal government is arguing, no, 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 you can trust us with this information. It will never get out to you. And yet we have seen here in the state of California, the records of about 10 million school students are being exposed to public review.
The very fact that the FBI is lying about this whole thing being linked to the San Bernardino case proves that you can't trust them. They're not coming out and letting everybody know that they've been trying to do this for years now, that there's an open case based on drug dealers and not on, you know, Islamic terrorists. They're lying to us about this. And the other thing we need to think about, I mean, think about the security of our government. You talked about San Bernardino, or you talked about the school districts, right? If Apple creates a backdoor iOS for the FBI, that means now China could have that. That means Iraq could have that. That means North Korea could have that. That means nobody is safe and secure from any sort of invasion anywhere. And it really, the international aspect really isn't that egregious when you think about that the FBI spies on Americans now more than they do Russians.